So it's supposed to be this scene, but good morning, everybody.
Hey, morning. How we doing?
Good. It is a Wednesday, July 9th, 2025, here on the Dev Talk Show. I'm Chris Gomez, along with Rich Ross, and I think we're getting started a little bit later, so maybe we'll jump into it more quickly, especially for the benefit of folks watching on YouTube in the future. I know sometimes we might wait because people are joining up on either Twitch or YouTube. But in any case, on this channel, we've been working on a Blazor WebAssembly standalone app that would manage user group meetings and signups and RSVPs, things like that. The technologies that are being used are Blazor WebAssembly standalone, so that's a little different from the Blazor web app template that first premiered in .NET 8.
Mm-hmm.
In .NET 8. And then there is the orchestration with .NET Aspire and Azure CosmosDB. So I think one of the things that we've probably been spending a lot of time on is the Azure CosmosDB integration with .NET Aspire. So
yeah, that's
like a big mouthful, but what it means is that .NET Aspire, besides, it's an orchestrator for your app, but it also has this series of integrations for lots of different products, right? I think when you kind of watch a lot of the demos and run-throughs of Aspire, typically it'll start off by, hey, I'm going to make a website, and it's going to have it's going to have a backend API, and maybe we'll have a database, and then we'll have a Redis cache. Yeah. And you'll see Aspire just all those things will fire up every time you start the app. And we've even on this show explored the distributed application testing, the integration testing support. We've kind of explored that two ways. We've explored it with Aspire, and then we've also explored it with C#. Well, I shouldn't call it C#, with ASP.NET Core's Web Application Factory.
Yeah.
But I can understand why you have your own integrated testing support in Aspire, because Aspire supports all kinds of things. So what if you've got a Node app? What if you've got a Python app? You're not going to have the Web Application Factory there. But it's the Azure CosmosDB integration that I think we're focused on right now. Let's see if we can catch up to where we left off last time.
So a couple things we could talk about real quick that we were kind of stuck on, but we got through. And if we go to, let's see, if you want to share my screen, we can start.
Now I can bring it back on. Yeah. Oh, that's nice that it did it this way.
There you go. Cool. Is that big enough?
Let me see. I want to make it full screen. I think for most people that text is good. 1UP might be just a touch better, but I tend to overdo it.
Oops, not there. On this one.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
Yeah. Now it might be a little cramped for you, but
it's all right. We'll figure it out. Let's see. So what we were doing at the end of this year last time was we were trying to get this HTTP endpoint working. This is a test harness, basically. Hey, can we write something to our metadata repository? And we were able to do that. So that happened. A lot of it was related to things like the casing of the ID wasn't matching, so it didn't have an ID value over in Cosmos, which it kind of had a little bit of a problem with. And then there was the type one, which also had lower casing, which needed to match up with how it's referred to over there. Value might have been an issue, but I know there were some other things when we could write there. So that was where we got kind of what I did really quickly to get things figured out. The path I started to go down after that was a little bit of component work. So let's see, there's a, if you go down into the web project, you have a folder that you created for your meeting component. Well, we also now have an event status component, which is just, a simple web component that gives us a label and has some information here around a select control and a way of populating that select control. So that's important. We'll take a look at that in a minute. And so to do that, we were actually querying the data set to get that. We'll query the data set. There's a Cosmos metadata repository that we use here, and that gets invoked, from the API endpoint. So when we call this method here around, hey, let's go ahead and get all the metadata, which is basically all the metadata values that match up, this is the method that gets called. And what was happening was, again, it came back to typing or casing. You can see here we've got lowercase type, and we've got an is active, which was lowercase. And when the coding session I did with Copilot brought it in as lowercase I and lowercase s for the sort order. So all of that was messing up my query, the net of all of that. And we can show this in a minute because we can show this in a minute, but basically what this does is it actually does retrieve all of the values and brings them back into and populates that control. So that's the good stuff. Where I kind of took things to the next level was, all right, let's think about some of the things we have here at two places. One being the app host, and we can look at the program.cs from the app host. And we started to do this a little bit because if you remember, I think kind of where we ended up in this value here of what we're calling it is essentially how Aspire winds up referencing to it. So those two values there have to match. And I'm sorry, it's not so much the two values there. It's this value here.
It's the
really
string.
This value here. Yeah.
So
go ahead.
Did we talk about this on the show last time where it's just one of those things that it becomes a mind bender, I think, until you use it so often. And it's really not that hard. It's just that in line 17, when you're getting a meeting container and then that var, actually, I forget what that really is.
iResult something.
Right, it's an iResource builder. Okay. Is that iResource, and the reason why I think it's an iResource builder is because then I think that allows like Aspire as a whole to chain on. If you just it's using the builder pattern, so you can keep chaining to this call, just like you see on line 22, where it's add project with reference, with reference, with reference.
Yeah.
But what happens is that the add container call itself, you are declaring the name of the container for service discovery. Well, one of the purposes of it is service discovery. If there are other purposes, I don't want to try and say that's the only purpose because I don't know.
Right.
So that's the string is the string you have to go use in your apps for service discovery to work.
Yes.
And if I remember correctly, we got stuck on that and we were using the wrong names, right?
Exactly. So this is looking at it from the app host. If we go back over to API, which is one of the places where we're really using that, it is, it's this part here now. And granted, they're named the same, which makes it super confusing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But that meeting container there refers to the meeting container that was essentially up here. Yeah.
Yep. Now they're the same.
So as long as they are in sync, we're in a good spot.
And if you make a mistake, like we might have done last time, and maybe your variable name is different from the stringly typed reference.
Yeah.
I don't know what to call that. Like it's like a reference. It's like I don't know what you call it. And if it's different, if you go use that name just because your brain goes there, then it's like, why isn't it working? Why does it say it doesn't exist?
Yeah. And I'm trying to,
like it says there, registers a container as a singleton for a given name in the services provided by the builder. That's so
right.
The other thing that happened here is you were just showing, and I think you were just mentioning how in your queries, well, not just in your queries, in the C# classes that we're using to represent these objects. This is a classic issue with C# and JSON, because most conventions for JSON are to keep things camel cased, meaning, or even different cases, but starting with a lowercase letter.
Yep.
But in the C# world, that feels weird.
Yeah.
And so we went through this once before, and I was sitting there when you were telling me about it, but I wasn't actually looking at code.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of narrowed my eyebrows thinking like, but we've solved this.
Right.
And that's true. But in our app host, we are now bypassing, in a way, we are bypassing the client integration, the Azure Cosmos DB integration as a client, here's a client to all of your Azure Cosmos DB resource. Now you figure out what to do next. What's the database? What's the container? When we were looking through that Azure Cosmos DB documentation last time, I even joked on air that like I would scroll to the part where we would get the client working and stop, and I never read any further. And I was like, oh, look, you can integrate far more deeply. You can basically say, hey, I don't want just the resource. I just want the database. I just want the container. And in some respects, I kind of like that, because it means your repository that's going to actually act on the resource doesn't have to know nearly as much as it did. Like you just want to give it as little as possible. You go, here's all you care about is containers, then that is all I will give you.
Yes.
But
and makes it simple, but
yeah, but it bypassed the configuration. So I'm kind of wondering if we can flip that back around. I don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's the part where, at least right now, I'm a little bit stuck. So
well, I wonder, and I don't know that. So another thing you're doing is you're setting up the Cosmos container as a keyed service.
Yeah.
And that seems to me to be a common, on line 37 and 38, because you could also have just used the extension method add Azure Cosmos container, right?
No. Well, to a point, yes. So if what we had here is we didn't have this, right? And I had add.
Oh, wait a second. That's a keyed one.
Right. So this one down here was what we were working with last time. And that worked because what happened then was over in this repository, and I've started to go down that's a metadata one. Sorry.
Yeah.
And
well, you already started down the keyed service path.
Yeah. So we had essentially this, where I had a client. Right. And then you ended up doing, get rid of that and that. Come on.
I think I can see why it didn't work for you, why you had to switch to the keyed path, but I'm going to follow it along here and make sure my guess is correct.
Well, this will work because when you come to here, if we go back to, our program.ces, we only have one Cosmos container that's in place.
That's what I figured the problem was going to end up being.
Yep. And I thought I would do the good citizens thing and kind of clean things up. So if we're using key containers, let's use key containers for both. And that's where things messed up. So I'm pretty sure that if I actually do this now and we save this off, why are you doing that to me?
I'm thinking under the covers, if we were to follow through that extension method, add Azure Cosmos container, it's probably not all that different from what you're seeing on line 40 and 41. It's probably a convenience method that adds to services. I don't know if it adds it scoped. I don't know. That's the whole point of the method. And I'm not trying to be ignorant about it. We could follow it through, and we've done that on the show before. But the moment that you add a second one, you've now created a conflict in services where it goes, well, wait, it's the same interface.
Right. So which service do I want?
Right. So you've switched to, that makes sense why you would switch to add keyed Azure Cosmos container. So now you're taking advantage of ASP.NET Core's support for keyed services. And I'm the only reason I'm like spouting out that mouthful is because we're at this integration of there's a Spire, but there's also ASP.NET Core, and we're using them together. So like which piece is which? But over on lines 26 through 34, we're seeing that we are configuring the client.
Right.
And because we're no longer using that .NET Aspire based client, you've now switched to the keyed service. That put us back to the beginning where the C# class is different cased. So Azure Cosmos DB says, I don't know what to do with this capitalized ID, and boom.
Yeah, and then it just basically bombed out.
So is this the one where you need the second? Well, so you're still on. Oh, wait, I see.
Yeah, it gave a dependency injection. Some services are not able to be constructed. Oh, because we did. Let's make sure the metadata. Yep, it's this guy.
Yeah, and I don't know that you need to tear all this apart because you were already heading this direction.
That's okay. We'll show how we can get back to it.
Okay.
So let's cut that. Let's do. Container. Stop this. And rerun. Cool. All right, that got us through all of that, so that's good. So now we can come to here, and we can go to the meetings. Oh, and we got a breakpoint, maybe. Yeah, actually,
you do have a breakpoint there.
Turn that off. It's pulling the right containers because it's going to get the orbital and orbital database in the meetings container. So let's do that. Let's F5 it. And if we go back here, we should. Uh-oh. Yeah. So this we might have to take a look at because I keep landing here.
I still think a lot of this has to do with, I think it has to do with the serializer. And I say it because look at where, when you follow the stack trace through, it's blowing up in parse response and process message is calling that. So I just think
that could be the issue. Working.
It was? Okay.
Well, I mean, this is so what this is doing is it's actually getting all of the meetings.
Right.
And we had that, because if we go back to,
let me ask you this question. Has it worked since you switched to a keyed service?
No.
Okay. So this is my theory on why it all blew up. If you go back to the Orbital app host, the .NET Aspire app host, we configured.
Because of this?
Kind of, but okay. Yes. But further up, we configured the Cosmos DB integration, not this one. It's a little further up. We had a Cosmos DB integration at the I don't know whether you want to call this the highest possible level or the lowest possible level. It's basically the one that says, oh no, it's not here.
It's not here. It's in the API one. I know the one you mean. This one.
Yes. Okay. Right. Now, this is not Aspire, right? This is add Azure Cosmos client. If you hover over that
extension method.
Oh, it is an Aspire method. Yeah.
Right.
That makes sense. I guess that's the piece about Aspire that I have to remember is there's the orchestration side, but then you still need, even though I think they're trying very hard to not tie too much Aspire into your app, like they're certainly trying to give you ways to not have to sprinkle it everywhere and have to include Aspire NuGets all over the world.
Yeah.
But I guess in the end, if they can confine it to your program CS is your place to compose your app. Something has to tie it in, but if we can confine it to that, maybe that's not so bad. Yeah. My fear has always been Aspire sort of wrinkling its way throughout, and it would be very easy to, and in fact, I think we have start finding it in your class libraries and so on. And I don't think we want that at all.
Yeah, I would agree.
So the point is, the grand point of all this is Add Azure Cosmos Client, as you can see, has extension methods on it that configure the client for the serialization option that we wanted, which most importantly was the one I think on line 32, I think, that's naming property policy camel case. And that seemed to let C# be what C# wants to be for most people. I mean, it is not invalid C# to go all camel case. I just think like every C# developer, including folks that were like in our comments, are like, oh man, what's going on? So I'm wondering if the keyed service, what does the keyed service let us do? So when you go down, if you go down to add, let's see, is that you say add keyed, right? Container. Yeah. So if you say add keyed Azure Cosmos container for now, I don't know what methods hang off of that.
Right.
But I guess I think well, let's see. It could be methods, or maybe there were options. Cosmos client options. Yeah, look at that. You can pass in right there. So the method takes it basically, you could do the same thing. You can put in, you can pass in an action.
As well as configuration settings.
Yeah. So we're set, actually. And there's two ways we could go about this. One would be to take that Lambda and pull it out into an action. Like,
this one here.
Right.
Okay.
So I think what you could do is you could say, let me think, it's early. Right. Is this is going to end up being an action, but basically these would be the Cosmos. Yeah. We can name it later. The thing about it is Cosmos client options.
Serialization?
No, it's going to be a new action. Or let me think. I think we could also do this Lambda wise.
Oh. So equal.
I might just be the two parentheses.
Like
I don't even think you have to new it.
Okay. Well, you gotta. That seems kind of awkward on this side.
I think you're good. I think put another parenthesis
here.
Yeah, and then equals. I'm sorry, not equals, the fat arrow thing.
Oh, this thing.
And then copy in the Lambda from up above. I may not have the syntax exactly right. No, I think it's close. So okay, no, we're good. We're gonna need that. We're gonna need that.
Need what?
What just got deleted? The client options piece.
Really?
I think we're gonna need that. Yeah, because we may. we may have to pass into the method. So the Lambda, I don't, you might just be able to type client options there. Because
instead of the double.
No, it's going to be in the, well, I guess it could be without it. Yeah. What I'm saying is that this method
is where it should have given you live share.
Yeah, I know I don't have a live share. This is what we're doing is we're trying to pass in a method that takes a client options and then it's void. It doesn't return anything. That's what an action is.
Okay.
Is it takes parameters and returns nothing. So I think all you have to do is
go back to here.
Yeah. If we look at that, we can see that it's an action that takes a Cosmos client options and it returns nothing. But we don't actually, it'll infer that. It'll infer that. So I think if you just take the client options variable naming from line 38 and pop it in the parentheses.
This part.
Yep. So no, not there. Up at the top in our Lambda. Just pop it in between those two parentheses.
So like that?
No, we don't need that left parenthesis. You don't need that one. So you only need one. And actually, you probably don't even need any. But we'll go on. Now put client options in and then close it. The other thing you'll have to do is get rid of the one that's sitting on line 45.
Yep.
Okay, now maybe it didn't all go away. What does it say there? I can't. Oh man, I threw it under the.
Yeah, there we go.
The delegate type cannot be inferred. Okay, so if it can't be inferred, then maybe we do have to put in the name of the variable, which is the name of the class. Which what was it called? Cosmos client options or something like that. For that, we want to go to. We want to go to here, right? We want to look at this declaration. No, that's not it. It's we need to know the name of the class because it can't infer. It just can't figure it out. So we need the IntelliSense for add Azure Cosmos client.
Oh, down here. Got it.
Okay.
Hang on. I'm going to drop this down one because...
Yeah, it's gotten too much. Okay, so see how we're trying to create the parameter, the second parameter, the configure client options, which wants an action of type Cosmos client options. So we need that Cosmos client options.
Right.
We need to go put that in the Lambda. Yep.
There it is.
And then you could just name it client options. So you just a space and then take that variable name.
Oh.
So what we're doing is we are telling.
There you go.
Yeah, we are telling in the compiler, we're saying, give me a new variable of type action Cosmos client options. And if you go hover over the var, it should now infer correctly.
Action. Yeah, delegate void action of type
right.
T.
So it's doing everything you want now.
Okay.
So now that you have Cosmos action, after all that, you see how up in the previous declaration on line 26?
Yep.
In C#, we can skip, well, the C# folks who work on C# might get angry at my characterization here. But when you use C# or Java or even many languages classically, if there's 6 parameters to a method, but some of them take null, you would find yourself parameter, null, 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 null to get to the 6th one.
Yes.
Well, in C# we can jump ahead, sort of, by using this syntax where we say, hey, the parameter configure client options, just jump ahead to that and use this.
Because that's the only one I care about. Right.
Right. So we can copy that syntax and take it down below to our keyed service.
Down here.
Thing. And then boom. The only thing is we got to give it the name of the action, which right now it's called Cosmos action. We'll work on that naming a little bit later. So did you have to do it this way? No. We could have copied the Lambda syntax over and over and over through each of these, but that would feel redundant, and then you'd have to change it in 3 places and stuff like that. But now we're wrapping up this syntax into one spot, and eventually that add Azure Cosmos client, I think, will go away. Eventually, maybe right now. So
well, we'll just do this for completeness, right? So now,
I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Just cleaning a little bit. That's all.
Yeah, and so now here's the interesting part. I don't think you have to touch any of your C# classes, because I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, this naming policy was resilient enough to say no matter what you do in C#, I will convert that variable name or data member or whatever it is. I will convert that to camel case.
Okay.
So if it's already camel case, it's like, I don't have anything to do. But let's see if that solves some of the other problems. I know that was a long that was a long way around to the end, but just that way. I was wondering why it's blowing up there.
Aspire, something about the Aspire launcher.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure we got rid of the breakpoint. Nope, maybe not. Nope.
Now this is different. Some services are not able to be constructed. I think I'm wondering if we still have some of those. Did we turn everything back into a keyed service throughout the app? No. So this is saying I don't
right now that is keyed.
Well, it's not keyed at all because it's not from keyed service, right?
Sorry, it's not referenced here as keyed, but this is the only one that we've defined as being keyed.
Yeah,
so we could
right.
From here, say.
So it's just complaining, saying I can't construct this.
Yep.
So that should resolve that.
And then we need to, from keyed services, open parentheses, the object key, which should be.
So what you're telling me right now is the meetings repository is not converted over, but we're in position to convert it over as long as this works.
If this works. Yeah. Because if you go back here, this is the API one. Yeah. So we're basically using the client that comes here. Not this one. Sorry. Using the client.
Yep.
And
right. We're still using that client, which we're actually close to abandoning, but not quite.
Yep.
And I can see that. Yeah. Like, again, it kind of goes back to, I don't know how much of this is preference as a developer. Like, there would be nothing wrong with your app taking a dependency on an Azure Cosmos database resource, constructing a client, constructing a database. I mean, there's value to it, especially if your app is going to perform operations on the resource. Like I think we've talked about, well, here's the interesting thing. Our iMeeting repository, no, it doesn't. Our iMeeting repository currently just relies on a container, but we've talked about this before, is does the app, if the app needs to basically say, if we want the way this app operates is that an admin logs in and tells the app, here's where my Cosmos DB connection string is, and then it says, okay, I can set up the database for you. Well, then it's going to need that access, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. So what is this? The meeting repository? I'm just not sure.
Yeah, this is the meeting one. Because we haven't done anything to invoke the metadata one yet.
Right.
And this is, again, at that result iterator bit.
Yeah, I just think it can't parse the response. At least I think it is. I guess I don't know for sure what the response is, but
so hang on. So So what we're saying is type meeting isn't matching up.
I think that's what it's complaining about, because parse response async is what's blowing up.
All right. Well, let's take a look. So let's stop this. Data, it's in core, there's meeting.
But like you said, this all used to work, so.
Yeah.
And I still think part of the problem is we're not getting Well, I don't know.
Yeah. I need that Data Explorer up and running so I could see it. That's not going to work without the application running. So, even though I turned it off, let's turn it back on.
Oh, we might be. So this is the problem
Might
that
be a
I
bigger
have.
issue.
This is the issue I have where I end up having to go out to Docker Desktop and delete the containers.
That's bizarre because I haven't. Interesting.
I don't know that you've run into this yet.
I haven't.
Yeah. Yeah. I think someone else told us in the comments that they had a similar issue. And I've trying to remember. I think I usually, and I don't, again, a little bit of voodoo, or maybe I actually have run into this where I've deleted the container, deleted the volume, even deleted the image just to make sure that it rebuilds it. I don't feel like I'm having this issue as often.
Okay.
But
yeah, I mean, that's the first time I think I've run into it.
Yeah.
I think I went too quick. Let's try that again.
Yeah, but it says it's unhealthy.
Oh, I wasn't even looking at that. Yeah. All right. Give that a second to do what it needs to
So,
build those up.
Interesting. Okay.
Still takes a little bit. At some point, they will.
So, like I said, I've deleted the whole world to get this to come back. Which I'm not trying to say that's definitely it, because I don't know. I mean, it's just my own example, and I haven't really proven it out. But once I get that message where it just doesn't seem to want to connect anymore, then I'll delete the container, the image, the volume, and just sort of let it start from scratch. Now, this is the preview emulator, which there's some good and bad with the preview emulator. Like, obviously, it's preview, so I can't say for sure if we're struggling because of preview. The thing that's nice about it, though, is this works not just in Linux. It also works, I mean, I guess it's still Linux, in a Linux-based GitHub code space, which is something else that we can do on this show soon. Is this app I almost have working in a code space. So.
Oh, cool. No, what's that?
So I would just go to the containers and dump it.
Yeah.
Well, and the app is closed, right? I guess it doesn't matter if the app is closed. Now go to images.
And get rid of that too. There we go. All right. Images.
And let's see, we got to find the image. Oh, wow. I'm actually not sure which one it is. No, it's not Azure, right? It's not that. It's not dev containers. That might be it.
What's that?
Yeah. That's it. So then I usually get rid of that one. And then the volumes I've also gotten rid of too. And I'm not sure. So under volume, you should see a volume for, because it's persistent, if I remember correctly. But I don't know which one this is either. Oh, it could be the bottom one.
So you can know because we go here and we tell when we set up the Cosmos.
Yeah.
We set up data volume, but we didn't name it. Okay.
Right. So I think the It's the last one in your volume list, that CosmosDB data.
This one here.
Yeah. Wow, 4 months.
Mm.
Well, let's see if we can get it to. Oh, actually, gosh,
Because I got those too.
I don't know what those other things are. Yeah, I don't remember.
Those other ones are other projects I've done for demos. So that should be.
All right. Well, let's see if you can fire it up now.
Yeah. Okay. There is a comment. Hello, Old Saga.
Yeah, good morning. So now it is actually pulling the image.
Yes.
For the Azure CosmosDB preview emulator.
Mm-hmm. Give that a few seconds.
Oh, interesting.
It's okay. I think it shows unhealthy, and then it should switch.
Okay.
He said, hopefully. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, I just remember so I don't have as many different projects going, so it was easier for me to identify the different pieces. But
true.
I mean, it's got the image, and it looks like it created a container. It's just not setting it up correctly for you.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, because I feel like the exception, at least, well, for a while, the exception was in parsing, so I don't know what it was getting back.
Yeah. Yeah, we never did see that. Failed to delete 11 images. That's interesting. You
We
really
probably don't want to
do them
delete
one at a
all of
time?
those.
I'm sorry?
You probably didn't want to delete all of those.
I think it's fine.
Oh, okay. So I don't know what's going on here. Oh, delete the container that's using it is what it's first complaining about.
We don't have any. Oh. So it says Cosmos in it. That's why. There you go. Good call. That's better. Now you can go to the images, and we can do this.
$18 gigs reclaimed. That's crazy.
Yep. Although it's probably on that dev drive share.
Just in awe of how far we've come when I used to put a 512K floppy into my PC. Or when we got the 3.5-inch floppies that look like they came straight out of the original Star Trek. I said, boy, a megabyte, that's going to last. Why would I ever need? That's great. That's all the space ever.
All right, images are gone. It's fine. All right. Everybody's happy. There's nothing here. All right, let's try again. Would you hit play, or would you?
I don't know. We could
rebuild?
See. I'm not sure.
I would think play would work.
Yeah, it's. I imagine it should.
Right?
Yeah, sure. I mean, it should say, okay, yeah, see, it's pulling an image there, right?
That's what we want.
So downloaded newer image, whatever it means by that. And I guess I never noticed before that it's running PostgreSQL under the hood. Which, I mean, it's got to be emulating it somehow. So, all right. And there you go. Now, we didn't start our web API app. And the API, I think, is the one that will identify that there's no meetings and seed it if you're on that. Because I didn't ever merge that seeding branch, but maybe you built on top of it. I'm not sure. You're muted, though.
Sorry, I did nothing with the seeding at this point.
Okay,
so what we can do, though, is this.
But you have a quick way to populate it, yeah.
I can at least populate one, because we can go
Right.
back to...
Well, let's hope we can
this.
populate one, yeah.
Exactly. Where it should create... Yeah. All right, let's call it.
That's an event status, but that's okay. Let's just see.
Yeah. Well, I want that in there first, and that
Okay.
looks like it worked, right? Because we got a 201 created.
Yeah. Yep.
If I go back over to here, do... Boom. So I have an event status scheduled. See, now this is where it's interesting, right? Because it did come through, and it's got the camel case sort order, for those things.
Mm-hmm. So I think that's the serialization that we've just set. You weren't seeing that before. You were seeing it.
I was.
Okay.
But that's not. If we go back to here.
Oh, yeah. So what's happening here is you're posting. ASP.NET model binding is filling out the class.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've instructed CosmosDB using that policy to make it camel case regardless.
Gotcha. But it's not going to do that on... So here's the thing. Will it do that on when it does the select statement to get it?
I mean, it should, because we had this all working with meeting without any fancy... Like, if you look at the meeting definition, there's no lowercase or camel case fields at all.
Yeah.
It might be meeting CS. Yeah, I think that's it. Meeting CS is like about halfway through. Yeah.
Gotcha. I was thinking of this one. It's in the API. Sorry. There we go. That's the one I'm thinking of, right? So oh, and that's not really doing a query. It's just pulling everything back. It's doing it all. Okay. All right. So then yeah, so we're not getting our status back from there, which we should.
Okay.
And I think that's because if I go, I could be wrong. I really think that's because of this.
Okay.
Which is fine. We can, certainly do that and see if this makes it. Okay.
Does that query work in the Data
That's fine.
Explorer?
It does. Yes, it does. And I'll show you. Let's go back to here. So this is the items one. If we go back and do this and say, because really all we need from here is the where clause. So let's do that. Copy. Back to here, hit this, paste. All right, hang on. Who are we missing? Because that should work. Oh, because there's no type. Type is... There we go. So that worked. What we don't have in there is the display name, which is scheduled because I left that off, unfortunately. So let's save that. Yeah, it's been updated. So now I think we have to do one last thing. Just recycle that because it's caching that information. So if I was to go back and request it, it's still gonna, it would be there, but with an empty display name. So I had to replace or refresh the cache. No meetings. There we go. So now it's scheduled, right? So we've got this there.
Yeah.
So now I can actually take that. Oh, yeah, title's required. Test meeting, blah, 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 blah. Location, DVD, keywords. Perfect. That looks good. It's fine. We'll leave that. Event status is scheduled. Then we do save meeting. Meeting added successfully. Right. And then now you have all of that. We have not added scheduled or the status
like we don't
of the meeting anywhere to this, right?
Right. Like we don't have an outcome in the UI to maybe show scheduled but not show drafts, or I don't know what we call them.
Yep.
Not unscheduled.
If we go here, and we look at meetings,
your query is still active, I think, right? Maybe. I don't know.
I don't know.
No, it's not. Actually, you're right. It's not.
Huh. So where did that go? Right, because if I come in here, let's just make sure. If I go here, I come back to here. Well,
okay.
because that would reload from the database, right?
It should, unless by some chance you're using the
It's
in-memory one, but I don't think you are.
No.
Remember that
Assuming we
in-memory
have an
repository?
implementation. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think you're using that. So
I agree.
So that's interesting, though, when you look at the Data Explorer.
Mm-hmm. Maybe. All right. So let's not. All right. It is there. It was a previous instance of Data Explorer, and maybe it wasn't. I don't know. It was an old tab.
Yeah, that seems weird. But anyways.
Yeah.
All right.
But what's cool, though, is maybe. There we go. That's what I was looking for, was that.
Yeah, right.
To make sure that property landed in the right spot. So when we load it again, and we don't have a way to edit, so when we get to the editing part, when we load it again, that drop down has to get selected for that value, and there's code in there to do that.
Right. Yeah, the composition of the Blazor components has been on my mind lately, in that displaying a meeting is a component, but then editing it is slightly different. Managing it might be slightly different. And the question for me starts to become is, okay, how much do we reuse? I mean, that's what we're going to find out. How much do we reuse versus, okay, the reuse has gotten difficult to manage. I don't know. Maybe it'll be fine.
Yeah.
I can't say that I've really thought through it yet. So I guess the key is so far what we've done is now I think what you could do is, going back to the metadata class, you would be able to not have to worry so much about casing at all.
Yeah.
And just let that serializer handle it for you. But there's still some things to work through here.
Mm-hmm.
I think in terms of, okay, we're going to store some different definitions. I think, there are some interesting questions for me. Like, okay, so we have event statuses. How do we tell the UI and the components whether to display them if they're user configurable? But I don't think that has to be solved right now. So.
Oh, well, they'd only be user configurable in, if I understand what you're asking, in edit mode, right?
Okay, so we are probably going to be inspired by the statuses in the event object from the schema.org.
Right.
And there's an event status enumeration that they've already picked some. But I feel like with this setup, somebody could come along and say, well, I want to add my own that have meaning to me in some way.
Sure.
Then the question would be okay, now that you've added your own, how do I tell the web app? How does the web app say, well, when you're in view, you should show this one. And when you're in edit, you should show this one and this one. And when you're in admin, you should show them all, or whatever.
Yeah. So, I mean, right now when we think about the metadata, there's an isActive Boolean. There certainly could be, some other one that defines this metadata as being part of the schema.org metadata, essentially, or not.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And then maybe it's included, but it shows in a different color because it's not part of the standard.
Yeah. All right. Well, I know we're 10 minutes past 9 here on the East Coast.
Yeah, we can't do 2 hours like we did last week.
Yeah, when it was a holiday. But I think we can be back on. I don't know about you, but I think I'm available Friday to continue here.
Yeah.
Offline, I've been digging into the Blazor WebAssembly security story, which is different from Blazor web app. Web app being the name of the template that once upon a time I think was being called Blazor United, but that's just for people watching, trying to level set where that's at.
Yeah.
This is a Blazor standalone, which it means you're all client side 100% of the time, instead of the islands of interactivity of the Blazor web app style. So,
gotcha. One thing, it's just going to bring this up because I think it's one of the things that we can think about and talk about. If we look at this here, so this is the metadata endpoint. So these are all the APIs that we use to manage and maintain the metadata. There's because of the typing required, there's essentially an endpoint for each definition that we create. So we've got it because here it says, hey, this is the event status that we're passing in because that's the value of the type property. And that's basically when it goes to get those are the things it's looking for, anything that's got a type of event status, because over in Cosmos DB, it doesn't know about class.
Yeah.
It only knows that those things map to the type.
Right.
What I want to do is get it to be like this, where I don't care what class we need. Can we just make it generic enough where we're passing in a type? Now, this is getting called via a RESTful endpoint, so we can't. It's just JSON we're passing along. It's not like we're passing along a class to do this.
Okay.
So it's not like when I call the repository and say, "Hey, here's the class. Go ahead and use this type."
Yeah.
So it's a little more complex, and I'm kind of struggling with, well, do I really want all those endpoints here, or do I really want a different way of doing this?
So let me ask this: do you? Because this will just frame it for next time. Yeah. Do you think that the user of this API needs the ability to create metadata types of their own, or is it confined to the definitions that the app has, event status just being one of them?
Yeah, I think it's confined just to. I think it's confined to what we include in the app. I don't think they're going to want to put their own set of properties in there because there's nothing that lets them do that unless they completely rewrite the app.
Yeah, so if it's confined, I think there's two ways to look at it. One is I think it's easier. But the second now is think just briefly about the what would without doing even more tap dancing, what would the what is it called? The Swagger or Open API spec look like to that person who then says, let me go look at the reference documentation. And the reference documentation is just saying /metadata type, and it's not providing examples for each type.
Yeah.
If that's more confusing, although I understand from a programmer point of view, it might feel like, oh, now I'm creating all these endpoints that kind of do the same thing.
Yeah.
But then can you produce the documentation that separates them back out more easily? Because one of the things you have on line 41, 42, 43, which is kind of nice, is that's setting us up for Open API something, whether it's I've tried to remember. I know Swagger is the older quote unquote name for Open API, but people still call it Swagger. But that Swashbuckle was the UI, or Swagger UI was the one that used to be in the box in ASP.NET Core, but they've taken it out of the box just basically so that now you can decide what you want to use. You can go back to Swagger UI, or you can use one of the many others. We're set up for whatever we use because this is defining that this particular method will return a 200. It'll return an Open API.
Yep.
It'll return with that name, stuff like that. So like we're setting up for that. We just have to think about how that looks later because I don't know. I agree. It depends on if it's worth it or not. We'll see.
Right, because how we figure out that implementation. I wasn't thinking about what you just said, is that even though it's a code issue, it also becomes a visible issue from the Open API spec.
Yeah. Where the alternative might be, even if the endpoints look like they're repetitive, they could still reuse implementations. There might be a way to turn this into one implementation. I don't know, but we'll see. So in any case,
cool.
All right. It's easy to keep going because there's a lot to get through. I know we've got some issues sitting up in GitHub. I think there's some code to get pushed up there. Some of these things I don't have in my version of the project yet, so I would certainly like to get a lot of that squared away. But
I will. They are being pushed up into the separate branch, the metadata branch, and
okay.
I think based on what we did here, I can kind of clean that up and push that up there. It won't be completed because we won't have all the properties there, but at least I'll have a framework of what the properties need.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey, I'll get us out of here. Hopefully, everybody, thank you for watching. I'm definitely, if you've been using .NET Aspire and Azure CosmosDB, or even if you're not using the Azure CosmosDB integration, I would encourage you, for the integration you're using, read through that documentation carefully. Because you find interesting things. Like, for example, we found how we can connect directly. Dependency injection can go directly to the container instead of asking the target of the dependency injection to kind of scaffold the whole process again. And then in some ways that frees you to write code that's a little bit more, that can be more ignorant of Aspire, for one thing, and even ignorant of Cosmos DB settings and so on. So you don't have to be passing those around your app all the time. So that seems to be a pretty good pathway. When we get that up into GitHub, then everybody can check it out. So just want to thank everybody for watching, and we will see you all next time on the Dev Talk Show.